project that's helpful to establish structure. In the 21st century, information was transmitted over the internet using servers and stored on hard drives, upon hard drives using backup drives, all held together by a bundle of cables. In 1986, paper was the end road of communication, and more paper could ensure reliable knowledge. This meant stacks and stacks of paper needed to be printed, sorted, checked, and curated, and stored. And everything that served its purpose, it would disappear, as if dead. And in the case of Chernobyl, you have one of the greatest scrambles of information ever recorded on paper, containing radiology reports, status briefings, newspaper articles, and letters from concerned citizens. Each of the documents presented was initially printed in 1986 and has remained untouched for nearly 40 years. Now, to be clear, the following 10 minutes is not a crash course on Cold War politics, economics, or science. While my little historian heart would love nothing better than to give you an in-depth analysis on each of these pieces of paper, I cannot do so. That is outside the purview of my research. Therefore, this video is broken into 4 parts, each one telling its own narrative, all the while backgrounded by a world crying out for certainty in an uncertain time. But like any good story, it needs a beginning. Our story begins with a box. This box, as a matter of fact. Now, this box is not like any other box. This box contains unique information that, as far as I know, has not been seen or reviewed anywhere else. Now, the story of how this box came into my possession is not nearly as fascinating as the story that it contains. However, I do love it quite a bit. So this story begins on a cold, wintry day in the midst of February in a storage lab. For the sake of the story and to get an idea of scale, let's describe this room by 100 by 200 feet in a large rectangle, almost like a box. Now, in this room are a number of notebooks and binders and storage equipment that has been cast off for almost half a century from the radiology lab in Concord. Now, the people that I was working with, we were tasked with cleaning out this room for further storage to combat the COVID. In order to get rid of all of these old and outdated and irrelevant notebooks, we were given this large bin on wheels that we would take folders into and pitch them out and either shred them or burn them. This process of grabbing, sorting, and burning was assigned to take most of the day. And in the middle of that day, we were taking out one of the bins and putting it into a shredder, and one of the persons who has nothing to do with our job walks past us and says, "Hey, did you guys find anything interesting in there?" And we looked at him and went, "We found lots of notebooks with terrible scribblings from certain scientists." And he looks back at us and thinks, "Actually, I think there might have been something from Chernobyl in there. Anyway, let me know if you find it." And off he went. I haven't seen that man since. Now, how did this one scientist not deliver a passing bit of dialogue to us? We probably would not have looked for this box. We would have thrown it into a shredder and it would have been lost forever. So wherever you are, Mr. Lab Technician, or whoever you might have been, thank you. So we shred this bin, and we go back to the room, and as we're pitching more boxes in, this box pops up. And on the cover of it, as if out of the hand of an angel, is written, "Chernobyl info, save." Well, the title like that, I feel like I had to read it. So I took it into my possession, asked around if anyone else wanted it. Well, no, they're going to shred it anyway. None of it was confidential. None of it was blacked out. So it was finders keepers. So I took it with me, read it over, and as I'm going through these things, my mind is thinking, oh, what if Chernobyl was a conspiracy? What if this was all grand setup? For any conspiracy theorists out there who believe that Chernobyl was a cooperative event between the USSR and the United States to see how people dealt with radioactive fallout, you get nothing. Good day. Now, while none of the information I found in this box makes it out that Chernobyl is some grand conspiracy between the Russians and the United States to see the effects of nuclear radiation, the amount of first-person information is staggering. And at the same time, the knowledge or lack thereof of the United States about Russian actions and their gaining knowledge as events unfold through communications between the USSR and the United States through Vienna or through direct message is fascinating. Sitting in an underground warehouse for 35 years, surrounded by dusty notebooks, not truly appreciated, and then inevitably condemned to be sent to fire and burned and lost to the world, this box has a unique story. And let's begin with the first briefing. So, let's talk about the earliest piece of information that I'm currently aware of that I have in my possession, dated on April 29th, 1986. So this document is from the EPA and it's done on behalf of the Office of Public Affairs. What's interesting about it, though, is that there is very little certainty in the document. Obviously, this is all preliminary information in just the initial briefing. There is also another attached document that has the meeting minutes of April 29th with the head of the EPA, where they talk about disseminating information and assembling a task force and how to best put out the response and notification to the governors of this disaster. And I quote, "The White House has established an interagency task force to coordinate the government's response to the nuclear reactor accident in Chernobyl." And as all good briefings go, it ends with a press note. In order to clarify our understanding of the situation, a press briefing will be held by senior officials of the Environmental Protection Agency, Department of Energy, Nuclear Regulatory Commission, and the State Department. Wednesday, April 30th, 1986, at 11 a.m., State Department Auditorium or Room, to be announced. Now, while this document is certainly the earliest, it's not the most meaty with information. That one comes a little over a week later on May 8th. So, this briefing begins on May 8th, 1986. And like any good briefing, it opens with a description of the plant. And while I'm not convinced I'm looking at the exact description and layout of the Chernobyl facility, I believe they're using a similar or identical design facility as reference for the Chernobyl one. Look at that. There's 3 little guys hanging out there. We're also establishing geography, populations, and the risks of the Chernobyl factory, what it's close to, most importantly, Kiev, which has a population of 1.2 million to 1.3 million. The graphic is going to pop up any second now. And in this first scientific briefing, we get to see how ingrained Cold War politics is in notifications and in communications. Firstly being, the United States does not consider the USSR a reliable source when transmitting information. Ta-da! I know, right? Though all this information might not be the most tantalizing, it does give an outline for the design flaws that the United States will later point out with Russian nuclear facilities. In this briefing, there's a lot to say, but also there's a lot more they don't know. For them, almost nothing is certain. It's funny going through this report and seeing things that they advise you not to do, because it's basically the exact opposite of what you should do in normal life. But let's just go through it. Firstly, avoid drinking fresh milk or eating other dairy products. Eat processed foods when possible and wash or peel fresh produce. When possible, drink bottled water and other bottled beverages instead of local water. So your local tap water providers, go screw themselves. You see the standard travel restrictions that you see kind of with any normal disaster. U.S. citizens do not go to Kiev. By May 9th, the task force reports there is no increased radioactivity detected in milk samples. In the opening headlines and the bodies of these task force reports, they note no hysteria. There's no exclamation points, there's no doomsday prophecies, nothing that is intended to raise alarm. It's mostly just the scientific community talking to one another and giving themselves professional opinions and analyses. Now all that can change with one news headline. As a lovely example, we have this newspaper headline, dated May 7th, 1986, which is titled, "Even before Chernobyl, radiation was everywhere." And at their conclusion, you have been receiving radiation your entire life and you didn't even know it. With terrifying headlines, you get terrified people. Terrified people write letters to media or to scientists or to the government. So in my hand before me, I have a letter that is dated the 21st of May, 1986, to a Mrs. Diane Teft, Division of Public Health, Radiology, Health and Public, from Mr. Peter Ladd. And in it, the primary concern is lack of clarity, or they feel there's a lack of clarity in the government to the people. Now we get into everyone's favorite subject, politics. If any man or woman thought that political strategies had changed from the beginning of time to the present day, you would be 100% wrong. On one hand, you see headlines that put fear into the heart of every man, woman, and child that reads them. You have politicians attempting to take advantage of the situation to try and throw mud on their political opponents or on their national antagonists. For example, news headline titled May 4th, 1986. We have Reagan chides Soviets for stubborn disaster silence, calls for full accounting. Another headline, Soviet leaders reportedly visit site of disaster accident. Energy Department denies officials gagged. Radiation levels reported in Europe. So what did all of Chernobyl do? If there's any point to take away from the Chernobyl incident, nobody knew anything, but they were fully willing to critique everyone else. If I had concluding thoughts on this project, it'd only be that I wish I had more time. I wish I had more time to run through more documents. I wish I had more time to give you more detailed graphics. I wish I had more time to show you more milk samples, for crying out loud. There is so much in these documents that I haven't shown you. We've really only just touched the surface of it. But in the time we did have, we ran through how I found the box. Thank you very much for indulging me. We ran through some of the initial briefings. We ran through some of the scientific data. We ran through the press and how politicians reacted to it. Who knows, if this video picks up traction or people ask for more, I might make another one. Maybe I'll find some time to make another video about this. This could all happen. But for now, I hope you enjoy the video, and I will see you in the next one.